The coffee was still warm when Margaret Caldwell vanished with her 17-year-old son, Paul, in the mining community of Moselle Ridge, West Virginia, population 2,184. The summer night of 1951 arrived with heavy heat and the smell of burning coal spreading throughout the Guyandotte Valley. Their neighbor, Lou Jenkins, looked through her kitchen window and saw Margaret, in a light blue dress with her son leading the pack of hunting dogs across the narrow backyard behind the Caldwell family's two-story wooden house. Paul was carrying a flashlight, its light swinging on the ground as they disappeared beyond the fence. Margaret's blue dress was the last streak of color amid the pitch-black darkness and the damp earth scent. What happened in the next 10 hours would haunt Moselle Ridge for more than half a century later. Before diving deeper into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest cases. July 1951, the Moselle Ridge area on the edge of Huntington, West Virginia, was immersed in the stifling summer heat and the steady hum of insects among the coal hills. The Caldwell farm was situated on more than 200 acres, surrounded by rows of old oak trees and a dirt road leading to the Guyandotte River. The Caldwell family was well known in the area. David Caldwell, 48 years old, was a lawyer and owner of a small coal mine, considered an influential figure in the community. His wife Margaret, often called Maggie, was a calm woman who had participated in church charity organizations, and their son Paul, 17 years old, was in his senior year of high school and often helped his father manage the hunting grounds behind the house. On the evening of July 12th, nearby neighbors recounted seeing Maggie and Paul leading two hunting dogs toward the kennel behind the farm, where they usually trained the dogs when the weather cooled. The light from the Caldwell porch filtered through the tree canopy and gradually faded as night fell. No one noticed anything else, except a few prolonged dog barks for about half an hour before everything returned to silence. The next morning, as the sun rose over the eastern hills, David Caldwell stepped into the backyard as usual but found no sign of his wife and son. The back door was ajar. The kitchen still held warmth from the coal stove the night before, the dining table had undished plates, and Maggie's light jacket still hung on the rack. The family's Ford truck was parked in the same spot as the night before, with the keys still in the ignition. He searched the entire farm, calling their names, but only heard dogs barking in response from the distant forest. After checking around the house and the road leading out with no traces, David returned to his study, picked up the landline phone, and called the Cabell County Sheriff's Office to report that his wife and son had disappeared overnight without leaving any message or sign. His voice was calm but hoarse, noted by the duty officer in the shift log at 6:12 a.m. The information was immediately forwarded to Sheriff Roy Nance, who oversaw the southern Huntington area, and he promptly ordered the opening of case file number 4217 and headed to Moselle Ridge. He went with Deputy Charles Hinton, bringing a Rolleiflex camera, crime scene measuring tape, and a notebook. As the police car turned off the main road, morning mist hung thick over the hillsides, the pastures around the Caldwell farm were still dewy, and the wooden gate was open. Caldwell was waiting on the porch, thin and pale, his white shirt hastily buttoned, eyes fixed on the forest behind the house. After a brief greeting, Nance asked about the situation again and requested to see the last place the family had seen Maggie and Paul. The two-story oak wooden house looked normal, with clean exterior walls, closed windows, and no signs of forced entry. The front door was locked from the inside, the back door ajar. In the kitchen, the coal stove still held some warmth, with the faint smell of coffee and baked goods in the air. On the dining table were still plates, two porcelain cups, unfinished food, and the tablecloth scattered with crumbs. Nance noted in his book, daily activities stopped abruptly, no cleanup. The living room was quiet, the wall clock still ticking steadily, showing 10 minutes to 7. As they walked down the hallway to the back, Hinton shone his flashlight to check the wooden floor and noticed small mud streaks in the shape of rubber shoe soles. The mud was still damp, extending from the back door to the yard. In the early light, he saw additional faint tire tracks, possibly from a truck or tractor, along with a series of footprints of different sizes, likely from two people. Hinton bent down, quickly measured the stride length, noting one larger print and one smaller, both heading toward the dog kennel diagonally behind the garden. At the wooden fence, he stopped because of a faint gunpowder smell in the damp wind. A key detail immediately noted in the crime scene log. The Pinewood kennel held 6 hunting dogs lying quietly, some with mud on their legs. No signs of struggle or blood, only a chain pulled askew to one side. Hinton returned to the porch and gave a quick report to Nance. The sheriff continued circling the house, checking door frames, locks, and lower floor windows, all intact. In Maggie and Paul's bedroom, the beds were neatly made, blankets folded flat, and Maggie's jacket still on the chair. The closet had no missing clothes, personal items, and wallet intact. David Caldwell repeated what he had said on the phone. He went to bed early and found his wife and son gone in the morning. Nance recorded the statement, instructed Hinton to photograph all main areas in the house, the backyard, and the kennel. Back at the car, Hinton opened his notebook to write the preliminary record, numbering each point in order: mud stains on the kitchen floor, back door ajar, shoe prints toward the kennel, gunpowder smell in the air, stove still warm, dining table unfinished, no signs of break-in. Nance reviewed it, nodded in confirmation, and signed under the conclusion. The report was sent to the county office near noon. In the assessment section he wrote, 2 individuals missing for unknown reasons. Scene shows unusual signs, possibility of incident within the property. Recommend deploying search team within a 3-mile radius around the Caldwell farm and planning a sweep of the Moselle Ridge area. On the morning of the second day after the disappearance was reported, Sheriff Roy Nance ordered a full lockdown of the entire area behind the Caldwell farm, including the kennel, garden, and adjacent forest. Warning signs were posted along the wooden fence, requiring locals to stay back within 100 meters. Deputy Charles Hinton was in charge of crime scene logging, with 2 technicians from the county office, bringing cameras, measuring tape, and sealing bags. The sky was gray, the ground damp after overnight rain, making the survey more difficult, but the soft mud helped reveal many new traces. The first marked point was the area behind the kennel, where the gunpowder smell still lingered. There, Hinton bent down and discovered a dull, shiny object in the wet soil, a brass shotgun shell, 12 gauge, lying about 3 meters from the fence. He used tweezers to pick it up, placed it in a sealing bag, and noted evidence item 1, brass shell, found at position behind kennel, half-inch depth. Upon closer inspection, he saw the surrounding soil had many cracks from heavy impact, possibly from footsteps. Another group scanned along the trail to the back garden, discovering deep tire tracks in the mud. The tire treads had a zigzag pattern, size not matching local police vehicles. Soil samples were cast in plaster to preserve the tread shape. In the temporary report, Hinton noted a common tire type but rare size, possibly a truck or small cargo vehicle. Along the direction of the tire tracks, they found a series of shoe prints. Hinton measured the length and width of the imprints, concluding they were men's shoes, approximately size 10, with deep rubber groove soles, commonly used for labor or hunting. Some prints overlapped, indicating at least 2 passes in the same direction. Back at the house, Nance ordered a check of the ground floor gun storage room. On the wooden rack were 8 hunting rifles of various types, but the spots for 2 Remington 870s were empty, with faint dust around the hooks, indicating they had been removed recently. David Caldwell confirmed often lent one to his son for target practice, but could not explain why the second one was also missing. Hinton recorded this detail, numbering related evidence item 2, 2 Remington 870s missing from storage. Outside the back porch, the technical team re-measured the tire track width, then compared it to Caldwell's Ford F-100 truck, parked in the front yard. After measurement comparison, the results matched in size and tread pattern. Hinton photographed it, adding a note: tire tracks match the homeowner's personal vehicle. However, upon thorough checking of the area around the kennel and fence row, they found no blood, no struggle marks, no fabric scraps or clear signs of altercation. Grass was lightly crushed. A few spots had shoe prints, but not enough to prove forced action. Collected items included the brass shell, soil samples, tire cast and scene photos, packaged and sent to the county office for processing. By late afternoon, Nance and Hinton reviewed all notes, confirming the area around the kennel as the only place with gunpowder smell and vehicle traces. In the final remarks of the day's record, Nance wrote, "Moselle Ridge scene surveyed and initial evidence seized, including 12-gauge brass shell, tire tracks and men's size 10 shoe prints. Gun room missing 2 Remington 870s, scene tire tracks match homeowner's Ford truck. No blood or clear struggle signs found. Results indicate the back area likely directly related to the disappearance of the 2 reported missing individuals." 2 days after the disappearance was reported, Sheriff Roy Nance signed an order to expand the search beyond the Caldwell property. The force included 12 county deputies, 2 volunteer miner teams from nearby mining areas, and about 30 local residents familiar with the Moselle Ridge Hill terrain. 4 tracking dogs were brought from the training facility in Charleston, tasked with sniffing personal items of Maggie Caldwell, provided by David, a fabric glove and a handkerchief with perfume scent. At 8 a.m., the group divided the search into 3 main directions: north to the oak forest, east to the Guyandotte riverbank, and south to the low hills interspersed with old trails, once used for coal transport. Damp ground after rain made traces easy to imprint but also quick to distort. The first team, led by Deputy Hinton, followed the wooden fence behind the farm, where shoe prints had previously appeared. The tracking dogs reacted at a point about 150 meters from the fence. There, amid thick grass and decayed leaves, they found an embroidered handkerchief with MC in red thread, still folded and with some dry mud. Hinton sealed the evidence, numbered 03, noting found in southwest of Caldwell property, 150 meters from fence. Shoe prints and tire tracks here faded, unable to determine the next direction. The second team moved toward the river, where gentle slopes and muddy areas formed deep ruts. They discovered along the bank many scraped soil sections, some low-height broken branches. Near the water's edge, a volunteer miner spotted a round, dull, shiny object half sunk in the mud. Hinton personally checked it. It was a metal watchback, about 3 centimeters in diameter, hinge broken, inner side engraved with small bird wing pattern. He placed it in a sealing bag, numbered 04, describing metal material, likely from a women's wristwatch. Not far from that spot, the mud showed a long and deep streak, smoother surface than surroundings, extending nearly 10 meters from the bank up to the forest. The streak was about 40 centimeters wide, mud pushed to both sides, indicating a heavy object dragged or pushed in wet conditions. Hinton measured with tape, photographed, took soil samples at 3 points, start, middle, and end of the streak. Wind from the river carried cold moisture and muddy fishy smell. A few dogs barked fiercely when approaching the trail section, then suddenly went silent. Police decided to expand checks into the riverbed. A diving team was mobilized from a nearby town. 2 divers entered the water within a 200-meter radius from the watchback position. Underwater visibility was poor, slow current, but thick with mud, finding nothing notable besides drifting wood and metal scrap. After more than 2 hours, the river search ended, recorded as no samples or bodies found. The shore team continued scanning downstream along the riverbank, marking 7 suspicious points, but all only animal signs. By late afternoon, the entire 3-mile radius around the farm was swept. Evidence collected that day included the MC embroidered handkerchief, broken metal watchback, soil samples at the drag mark positions, and scene photos. Nance compiled the results into the end-of-day report. Expanded search around Moselle Ridge completed. Personal items of victim found. Mud traces indicate heavy object dragged from fence area toward Guyandotte riverbank. Object unidentified and no bodies found. Recommend continuing sweeps of adjacent areas along the flow direction. The morning after the search was temporarily halted, Sheriff Roy Nance and Deputy Hinton began collecting statements from residents around the Moselle Ridge area. The witness list was compiled from households near the Caldwell farm and some workers at the old coal mine to the south. The first person questioned was Eunice Palmer, the family's longtime housekeeper. She stated that on the day of the disappearance, she left the farm at 8 p.m. after cleaning the kitchen and preparing breakfast for the next day. When asked if she heard anything unusual, she hesitated and then said she heard arguing coming from the back study, with both David and Paul's voices loud, lasting about a few minutes. According to her, the last sound she remembered was a door slamming hard and dogs barking fiercely in the yard. Palmer said she did not hear any screams or gunshots, but had a feeling that the house was not at peace when she left. The police recorded the entire statement and had her signed to confirm. The next was Howard Denton, a neighbor living about 400 meters from the Caldwell farm. He said that night, while feeding livestock late, he saw vehicle lights shining from the Caldwell yard and heard running water. When he stepped out, he recognized David Caldwell washing the Ford truck under the porch light around nearly 10 p.m. Later than usual, he said he saw no one else around and heard no voices. When asked why he remembered the time clearly, Denton replied that he stopped work right after to lock the livestock pen, and his house clock still showed nearly 10 when he went inside. Hinton's note in the file: independent witness, statement matches on timing, direct observation. The third witness was Vernon Hale, a mine worker formerly employed by Caldwell. He stated that in the early morning after, on his way home from the mine area, he saw vehicle lights moving slowly on the dirt road leading away from the Caldwell farm toward the Guyandotte River. About 20 minutes later, when he reached the high slope, those lights appeared again in the opposite direction, heading back to the farm. He insisted he was not mistaken because it was the only road through the hills and the light was yellowish like the type on old Ford models. Nance assessed the statement as valuable because the time frame matched the tire tracks and drag marks recorded the previous day. During the formal interrogation at the county office, David Caldwell presented a completely different account. He insisted that evening his wife and son went out to walk the dogs, then he went to bed early and did not know where they went. When asked about washing the truck, he explained just wiping off mud after the afternoon rain. Nance asked for the specific time, and Caldwell replied vaguely, perhaps before it got fully dark. This statement was recorded in the file, but the details did not match the witnesses. Hinton added to the report, the disappearance reporter provided conflicting information, truck washing time unverified. While the investigation team continued compiling records, an internal memo from the county mayor's office arrived that afternoon requesting temporary suspension of investigation into family internal direction until new instructions. The typed line was brief, with no reason explained. Nance read it, was silent for a moment, then placed the paper in file 4217, stamping it internal circulation. That evening, he and Hinton reviewed the statement list, agreeing to include in the official report only details related to time, location, last activities of witnesses, while the parts mentioning contradictions with Caldwell's statement were moved to a technical appendix for review. Nance's end-of-day report sent to the county office stated, witness statements confirm unusual activity at the Caldwell farm between 9:10 p.m. on the disappearance date. Reporter provided inconsistent information. Recommend considering continued monitoring of family internal investigation direction. However, all efforts seemed to stop at suspicion. The evidence collected was not strong enough to confirm criminal activity, and the technical tools at the time were too rudimentary to allow the investigation to go further. In 1951, the technical capabilities of the Cabell County Investigation Agency were still very limited. The state forensic lab was not equipped with modern testing equipment, no means for DNA analysis or microtrace examination. Identifying biological traces relied almost solely on naked eye observation, magnifying glasses, and simple chemical tests to detect blood or oil. All evidence collected from the Caldwell farm, including the brass shell, soil samples, tire cast, and embroidered handkerchief, was transferred to storage in a rudimentary state. Each evidence bag was sealed only with cloth tape and hand-numbered, with no cross-verification process or chain of custody log. Due to humid weather, some bags began yellowing and tearing at the edges after just a few days. Meanwhile, scene photos taken with the Rolleiflex camera were scratched from manual developing, making some images blurry and unreadable for soil surface details or footprint shapes. Sheriff Roy Nance sent a compiled report to the state office, but the response from Charleston stated the case lacked elements to escalate. The central agency recommended the local level continue collecting evidence and monitoring. Deputy Charles Hinton, who directly documented the scene, prepared a separate technical report describing in detail the gunpowder smell, tire tracks matching the homeowner's vehicle, and Caldwell's conflicting statements. In his personal assessment, Hinton wrote, "Multiple signs indicate the homeowner's presence at the incident area. Cannot rule out direct involvement of Mr. Caldwell in the disappearance of the two missing individuals." This 10-page report, with attached scene sketch diagrams, was sent with the official file to superiors. However, when the file was finalized for submission, Hinton's report was removed from the list and replaced with a different summary signed by Nance, in which the assessment was shortened to insufficient evidence to determine criminal activity. Hinton was informed that his evaluation exceeded current technical scope and could not be considered a legal conclusion. In internal records, he was listed only as person performing measurements and photography. Afterward, most collected evidence was moved to the county office's temporary storage without cold preservation or anti-humidity treatment. The brass shell began oxidizing, losing its initial shine, soil samples dried and cracked, the plaster tire cast chipped at corners from multiple moves. Hinton noted privately in his personal notebook that samples are degrading, preservation inadequate. He once proposed sending evidence to the state lab in Charleston, but was denied due to insufficient manpower and means. At the same time, pressure from local authorities forced Sheriff Nance to suspend the investigation direction related to the Caldwell family. Press conferences were postponed indefinitely, media denied access to files. When the final technical report was sent up, it contained only a list of 7 evidence items and 5 clear photos, with a temporary conclusion. No criminal traces identified, disappearance cause unclear. A small line at the page bottom, written by Hinton in pencil on his retained copy, stated some key evidence removed or lost during storage. That note was not attached to the official file. He kept it in his personal folder with unedited original photos. In the Cabell County work log, the Caldwell case was classified insufficient evidence and placed on the pending supplement list. Nance signed final confirmation, marking the technical phase completion at the end of July 1951. The case was halted at preliminary investigation inconclusive. Internally, many acknowledged no further tools to proceed. At that time, bullet trace examination was limited to visual comparison through mechanical microscopes. Concepts like DNA, fingerprint, or blood cell analysis existed only in research documents from large labs in New York or Washington. In Cabell, criminal investigation relied on memory and observation, and in the Caldwell case, both were insufficient to go beyond the remaining mud streaks on the wooden floor. 3 months after the disappearance was reported, official search efforts were maintained on a small scale, mainly handled by local patrol teams. Sheriff Roy Nance, despite investigation direction restrictions, still instructed Deputy Charles Hinton to continue scanning old mine routes around Moselle Ridge. By mid-October 1951, while checking an abandoned mining area about 10 miles west of the Caldwell farm, Hinton's team discovered a large metal object glinting under coal dust and decayed leaves. Upon closer approach, they recognized it as the front of a Ford F-100 truck, the same dark green as the one owned by the Caldwell family. The license plate was mud-covered, but when wiped clean, the characters matched David Caldwell's vehicle registration in county records. The truck lay tilted in a shallow dirt pit, front wheels partially sunk in mud. All doors were closed, windows intact, no signs of heavy impact. Hinton carefully opened the driver's door. The cabin held only thick dust and a few rotted paper scraps. No personal items or signs of recent occupancy. The leather seats were dry and cracked, gear in neutral, odometer stopped at 24,183 miles. He noted, vehicle stopped naturally, no external impact. The rear bed was empty, only some dirt and dry leaves blown in by wind. Hinton measured, observed the bed edges, noting no scratches or drag marks, mud evenly adhered, indicating the truck had been there for some time without moving. He signaled the technician to photograph the entire vehicle, especially wheels and undercarriage. The left front tire was flat, right rear half sunk in mud. In the dim afternoon light, Hinton clearly saw old tire tracks leading from the trail down to the pit, no turnaround or sharp turns. It appeared the truck either rolled or was driven here and abandoned. Opening the hood, they found the battery removed, engine oil dried up. No suspicious technical signs. Preliminary conclusion, vehicle abandoned for an extended period, no signs of use since the disappearance. Outside, the area around the pit was marked and checked. The technical team took mud samples from under the chassis, shone lights for blood or fabric, but found nothing. Hinton paid special attention to the bed edges, dust layer even, no scratches or tears, no indication of holding heavy objects or compression. The technical report stated clearly. No drag marks or bulky objects in the truck bed. Inside the cabin, he found a faded toll receipt dated July 9, 1951, 3 days before the disappearance report. The receipt was from the Milton toll station, about 10 miles east of Moselle Ridge. The scrap was sealed as evidence, numbered 06. Additionally, the glove compartment held only a few miscellaneous note papers and a broken fountain pen. No blood, no struggle marks, no hair or fabric. When reporting results to Nance, Hinton emphasized the truck discovery could help determine Caldwell's or his family's final route. However, with no specific evidence of crime, the county office reclassified the case as accident or voluntary disappearance. Nance prepared a compiled report to the state office, writing Ford F-100 truck discovered at abandoned coal mine, 10 miles from scene. Interior: no biological evidence, no blood, no struggle signs. Preliminary analysis shows no heavy impact or forced movement. This report was stamped received and filed with case 4217, replacing previous versions focused on criminal suspicion. On October 22, an internal meeting record at the county office officially proposed reclassifying the Caldwell case as disappearance of unknown cause. The decision was signed by Sheriff Roy Nance with a short note. Insufficient basis to determine criminal activity. Recommend suspending active investigation, maintain file monitoring. The same day, the Ford F-100 was towed to the county police temporary impound, but after checks found no further clues, it was moved to an outdoor evidence lot. Hinton added to his work journal, the truck had been there so long moss was growing underneath. Nothing in the cab but dust and silence. That was the last physical evidence recorded in the initial phase of the Caldwell case, closing a 3-month search chain without clear results. By the end of 1951, after more than 3 months of area sweeps and evidence collection, the Cabell County Sheriff's Office concluded that there was no basis to determine criminal activity in the Caldwell family disappearance. All evidence obtained, from the shell casing, tire tracks, shoe prints, handkerchief, to the Ford F-100 truck abandoned in the coal mine, was reviewed one final time in a summary meeting on December 18. The official conclusion, signed by Sheriff Roy Nance, stated clearly, no traces of crime found, cause or location of the 2 missing individuals undetermined. File temporarily closed. The meeting lasted less than an hour, with the minutes neatly typed and stamped with case number 4217 final. Deputy Charles Hinton, who had directly conducted the scene survey, was present at the meeting but was not asked to speak. The minutes contained only 4 signature lines, including the sheriff, administrative clerk, county legal advisor, and a representative from the mayor's office. No one mentioned Hinton's separate technical report or the conflicting details in David Caldwell's statements. After the meeting, the evidence was transferred to basement storage, each package renumbered according to storage standards. Their condition was noted: some cloth bags torn, soil fragments cracked and dry, plaster tire cast chipped at corners, shell casing beginning to tarnish. All were placed in a metal cabinet, sealed, and labeled Closed File 4217. Nance's summary report was only 2 pages long, opening with investigative activities from July to October 1951. Revealed no criminal elements. The assessment section stated, possibility of accident or voluntary departure from residence, not ruled out. The brief conclusion, no further investigation required unless new developments arise. From then on, the Caldwell file was officially moved to passive archive status. No warrants issued, no detentions, no monitoring requests for homeowner David Caldwell. Internally, some younger officers felt the file was closed too soon, but all feedback was dismissed with the reason limited resources and no legal evidence. When the decision was announced, Roy Nance only said to Hinton, "We did what we could." The local paper, the Huntington Herald, ran a short notice on page 4, just 8 lines. Authorities confirm no criminal traces in Moselle Ridge disappearance. Case remains unresolved. No commentary articles or family interviews, just a blurry photo of the Caldwell Farm's wooden gate. In neighboring towns, the story quickly faded. Locals still mentioned the disappearance as an unsolved mystery, but no one saw police returning to Moselle Ridge. In early January 1952, the Cabell County Archives officially entered File 4217 into the closed cases. Miscellaneous catalog, between traffic accidents and missing relatives. An administrative clerk added to the index, Caldwell D., missing family, unresolved, archived. No further notes. The Caldwell house returned to silence. David Caldwell still went to his law office in Huntington daily, occasionally receiving guests on the porch in the afternoon, second-floor windows always closed. No family members were questioned further, no search warrants, no more press conferences about the case. In the county's public records, entry 4217 became just a number among hundreds of unresolved cases. Stamped December 22, 1951. The official end date of the Caldwell case's initial investigation phase. From early 1952, after File 4217 was closed, the Caldwell farm gradually sank into silence. Hired workers left. The dog kennel stood empty, weeds overgrew paths, and the wooden fence weathered through seasons of rain and sun. Moselle Ridge Hill, once the family's bustling hunting grounds, now held only rows of leafless oaks and wind whistling through loose tin roofing. No one visited the 2-story house, except an occasional gardener hired to cut grass, mainly to maintain the property's appearance. The surrounding community changed rapidly too. After the early 1950s mining crisis, most small Guyandotte coal mines closed, workers left for jobs elsewhere. Mine roads into Moselle Ridge were no longer maintained, many sections overgrown with brush. The 1956 administrative map listed only Caldwell property, inactive. Meanwhile, David Caldwell maintained his law practice at his private office in Huntington. He rarely mentioned his wife and son, and when the press asked about the disappearance, he answered briefly, "Nothing new." Outwardly, his career seemed unaffected. He joined the City Trade Council, served as legal advisor to a local coal company, and was invited to speak at the new City Hall dedication in 1961. In public meetings, he was still called the man who knows the law better than anyone in Cabell County. Roy Nance himself, the retired sheriff in 1957, left town and moved to live with his daughter in Kentucky. He never mentioned the Moselle Ridge case again, considering it an unsuccessful part of his long career. Deputy Charles Hinton, the lead investigator, stayed in Huntington a few more years before resigning in 1959. The personnel file listed the reason as transition to civilian sector. After leaving the force, he worked security for a transportation company, living simply in a small house near Route 10. In his personal storage, Hinton kept a private file folder, copies of his 1951 technical report, several original scene photos, and a notebook detailing every workday at the Caldwell farm. He never made them public, but occasionally added new comments in blue ink. "If anyone reopens this, start at the kennel." That note was on the last page of the notebook, amid old ink stains. By the 1960s, as new industrial zones rose around Huntington, people nearly forgot the event that had drawn attention nearly 2 decades earlier. The press no longer mentioned Caldwell, and the younger generation only heard of the disappearance through vague elderly tales. File 4217 lay deep in the archive's metal cabinets, renumbered under the new system, and never retrieved in nearly 2 decades. Outside, the farm stood silent, porch roof moss-covered, second-floor windows sealed, old curtains darkened by time's dust. Passers-by rarely stopped. The road to Moselle Ridge became a path for local hunters each fall, who said they sometimes still heard dogs barking from behind the old house, but no one verified it. In Huntington, David Caldwell aged noticeably. He still appeared at social events, but his face grew more somber. In 1968, he was elected honorary chairman of the Cabell County Bar Association, a ceremonial role. In his acceptance speech, he mentioned changes in the profession, but said nothing about his personal life. Some colleagues recalled his office had almost no staff, just a secretary coming in a few hours weekly. Every afternoon, he still drove himself to Moselle Ridge, stopped at the gate, looked over the weed-covered lawn, then turned back to Huntington before dark. No one knew what he did in that short time. By the late 1960s, his name gradually vanished from legal news. The Caldwell house was listed in tax records as inactive real estate, and the 1951 disappearance was classified by authorities for long-term storage. Throughout the West Virginia judicial system, no request to reopen the file in 19 years. The Moselle Ridge story became part of local memory, vague, outdated, and nearly swallowed by the dust of time covering everything left from the Caldwell case. In August 2004, the Moselle Ridge mine, abandoned for over half a century, was granted a survey permit by a local mineral extraction company to expand into new mining areas. The site lay about 12 miles from downtown Huntington, surrounded by low hills and dirt roads nearly erased from traffic maps. During a routine morning shift, the crew led by field engineer James Ralston began excavating the rock layer in the western section, adjacent to an area noted in old land records as Caldwell private property. Mid-morning, worker Frank Donnelly struck something hard with his shovel, producing a metallic sound. Thinking it was scrap, he dug around it and uncovered a rectangular metal box, about 25 centimeters long, rusted and half buried in black clay. The box surface was coated in coal dust, the lid dented but still sealed. When pulled up, one corner broke, revealing small, dull, shiny objects inside. Recognizing it might be old artifacts or industrial debris, crew leader Ralston ordered the excavator stopped and notified the Cabell County Sheriff's Office per regulations for potentially investigative finds. 2 hours later, local police arrived, secured the excavation site, and transported the metal box to the company's temporary station. There, under engineer Ralston's witness, police opened the lid. Inside were various items jumbled together: 2 tarnished 12-gauge brass shells, a wristwatch with cracked glass, a small bundle of light brown hair, and a tightly rolled Super 8 film canister in a dark cloth pouch. All were caked in dry mud and smelled of old earth. The watch was stopped at 8:46, hands nearly rusted to the dial. The hair bundle was loosely wrapped in rotted wax paper, apparently placed in the box at the same time as the others. The county sheriff, reviewing the initial report, noted the discovery location matched the former Caldwell farm area, once central to the 1951 disappearance case. Though none of the workers knew of the case, Ralston happened to recall his father mentioning the abandoned house and 2 people missing at Moselle Ridge. Seeing potential connection to old records, police drafted a detailed scene report, marking GPS coordinates and measuring distance from the find to the old Caldwell kennel, estimated at about 200 yards northwest. The box contents were sealed in specialized plastic bags, labeled Evidence Number Mr. 0421. The attached report stated, evidence consists of one metal box containing multiple items potentially related to file 4217, discovered at Moselle Ridge Mine, coordinates 38, 405 degree N, 82, 417 degree W. The same day, all samples were transferred to the Charleston Forensic Lab via West Virginia State Secured Transport. At the county office, police filed an urgent report to the State Police Department, attaching copies of original File 4217, the Caldwell case archived since 1951. This was the first time in over half a century that case number 4217 was retrieved from storage. Administrative staff located the old folder, still intact in yellowed paper clipped inside a hard cover marked closed file. The seal from Sheriff Nance's time remained, ink smudged but signature clear. Inside were original minutes, scene sketch maps, several of Hinton's black and white photos, and the summary report, no criminal elements found. When reopened, the pages crumbled under fingers. The Cabell County Sheriff's summary report dated August 15, 2004, stated, a metal object containing unidentified samples was found in the former Caldwell property area, possibly related to the 1951 disappearance of 2 individuals. Samples sent to Charleston Forensic Lab for verification. Recommend state agency consider reactivating file 4217. The same day, the state case management system officially updated the file status. Reopened, cold case investigation. This entry replaced the closed status that had lasted 53 years. At Moselle Ridge, mining was temporarily halted, the box discovery area cordoned off, and signs reading investigation area, no unauthorized entry, erected at the main access. For most Huntington residents, the news appeared briefly on the evening broadcast. A metal object believed to be evidence related to a 1951 disappearance was found at Moselle Ridge. No one expected that chance discovery in the earth would cause a file thought permanently closed to be reopened after more than half a century buried in the dust of time. After receiving the report from the Cabell County Sheriff's Office regarding the discovery of a metal box at the Moselle Ridge mining area, the West Virginia State Police swiftly issued a decision to establish a special investigative unit dedicated to handling long unsolved cases. The new unit was named the Cold Case Task Group, Region 5, operating under the State Criminal Investigation Division with headquarters in Charleston. The task force's initial objective was to re-examine the entirety of File 4217, which had been archived for 53 years, to determine whether the new discovery was truly related to the disappearance of the Caldwell family. The team leader appointed was Eleanor Hayes, a veteran investigator who had previously handled numerous unsolved murder cases in Kanawha County. Hayes was born in Huntington, so she had a deep understanding of the social and geographical context of the Moselle Ridge area. Her assignment to this role led experts to view it as an opportunity for the state to test a model of re-investigating old files using modern forensic technology. In the first week, Hayes and her 2 assistants went to the Cabell County Archives office to receive the entire physical file. Upon opening the file cabinet, they discovered 5 thin folders wrapped in oil paper, all labeled Case 4217. The papers inside were yellowed, the handwriting faded, and some corners gnawed by mice. The front of the file was the report by Sheriff Roy Nance, typed and signed on December 22, 1951. The subsequent sections included appendices with crime scene reports, evidence lists, and black and white photographs. Notably, in the third folder, Hayes found a loose report titled Supplementary Report by Officer Charles Hinton. This sheet was hand-numbered and not included in the main index. Upon comparison, she noticed a clear discrepancy between Nance's report and Hinton's notes regarding the quantity of evidence collected at the 1951 scene. Nance's official report listed 7 pieces of evidence, while Hinton's document recorded 12, including a piece of cloth with dark stains, 2 brass shell casings recovered from different locations, and a sample of moist soil near the dog kennel. These details were entirely absent from the original released file. Additionally, Nance made no mention of collecting shoe prints or the smell of gunpowder, while Hinton described them in detail in the technical notes section. Hayes immediately had both versions photocopied, renumbered, and created a comparison table. She noted discrepancies not only in the evidence list, but also in the report completion dates. Nance's file was dated December 22, while Hinton's was December 19, 3 days earlier, suggesting Hinton's version might be a draft before edits. Furthermore, in the observations section at the end of Nance's report, there was only a brief line, "No criminal activity detected." But in Hinton's version, this section was longer, with a handwritten note, "Possible family member involvement in the disappearance. Further examination of the dog kennel area needed." This led Hayes to suspect that the initial case conclusion may have narrowed the investigation scope. When reviewing the original photographs, she noticed that each was numbered to match the catalog in Hinton's report, not Nance's. There were 12 photos in total, taken from various angles around the house and dog kennel, while the official list only included 5. Some photos clearly showed shoe prints and mud streaks that had never been previously disclosed. Hayes requested the technical department to digitize all materials and sent a formal request to the Charleston Forensic Laboratory to compare the newly recovered evidence with the old descriptions for any matches. In her memo to superiors, she wrote, "There are significant differences between the released file and the internal documents of the Caldwell case. The possibility of interference in the 1951 reporting process needs to be investigated." On August 28, 2004, the Cold Case Unit was officially allocated a 6-month operating budget to reopen the investigation. They set up a temporary operations center in the Cabell County Administrative Building, where old documents and new evidence were assembled. Eleanor Hayes assigned forensic technician Richard Boone to review the original photo data and document analyst Mary Slater to restore Hinton's handwritten notes. During the review, Slater discovered an additional small note at the bottom of Hinton's report page, written in pencil. "Critical evidence, not submitted, awaiting confirmation from superiors." The writing was faded but readable under reflective light. This discovery drew particular attention from Hayes as it reinforced the hypothesis that some evidence may have been overlooked or removed from the official file. She immediately incorporated the note into the new report, signed it for verification, and attached it to the dispatch to the state police headquarters. By the end of the month, in the West Virginia State Investigation Database, the Caldwell case was updated to status reopened, Cold Case Priority Level 2. After more than half a century of being forgotten, a file once closed for lack of evidence now reappeared in the list of cases requiring urgent review, marking the start of a reinvestigation phase conducted under modern scientific standards. When the cold case investigative team transferred all evidence discovered at Moselle Ridge to the Charleston Forensic Laboratory, the examination process was conducted according to modern West Virginia state standards. The samples were separated for DNA analysis, metal materials, and image recovery. The forensic biology department received the clump of hair found in the metal box. Under a microscope, experts determined it was adult human hair, light brown in color, approximately 13 centimeters long. Each strand still had the root bulb attached, sufficient for nuclear DNA extraction. After 2 weeks, the comparison results showed the gene sequence matched completely with the medical records stored at St. Mary's Hospital in Huntington, where Margaret Caldwell had regular checkups in 1949. The DNA sample was compared using standard CODIS procedures and achieved a 99.998% match. The official report stated, the hair in the metal box belongs to victim Margaret Caldwell. This discovery confirmed that the metal box found at the Moselle Ridge mine was directly related to the 1951 disappearance. Meanwhile, the metal materials team analyzed the two 12-gauge brass shell casings. Under an electron microscope scanner, the rifling marks and firing pin impressions were clear. When compared to the ballistic data stored in the original file 4217, the scratches matched completely with test-fired rounds from the Remington 870 that David Caldwell had registered ownership of in June 1951. This shotgun was listed in his weapon inventory and legally permitted for hunting purposes. All technical characteristics, rifling depth, firing pin indentation shape, and hammer strike marks, matched within an error margin of less than 0.5 microns. The examination concluded the shell casings recovered from the metal box were fired from the same Remington 870 shotgun, registration number matching Mr. David Caldwell's records. A note at the end of the report emphasized that the probability of random matching between the two rounds under these conditions was virtually zero. While the physical analyses were underway, the imaging team processed the mud-caked Super 8 film reel. The reel was nearly 3 meters long, with the beginning section rotted and stuck together, requiring the removal of 8 inches to avoid damaging the whole. After drying with nitrogen gas and recreating the coating layer, the recovered images were blurry but still showed outdoor scenes. The beginning of the film depicted a row of wooden dog kennels with 6 compartments, slanted lighting indicating evening or dusk. In the middle of the frame appeared 2 people, an adult male and a young teenager, tall and slender, wearing a light-colored shirt. The images were clear enough to identify similarities with 1950 photographs of David and Paul Caldwell in the original file. Particularly, in the second half of the reel, as the camera panned toward the fence in the back, the background audio captured 2 muffled voices, one older with a distinctive southern accent and one younger somewhat tense. The forensic audio team isolated the signals and processed the frequencies, resulting in a 92% match with voice samples from old recordings of David Caldwell in a 1949 hearing and Paul Caldwell in a Huntington High School interview tape stored at the local radio station. The minor deviation was attributed to distortion from the original tape. More importantly, the end of the reel recorded 2 sharp cracking sounds, 2.3 seconds apart, characteristic of short-range shotgun blasts. The volume and frequency spectrum indicated 2 shots fired in an open space, with the distance between the camera position and the sound source only a few dozen meters. Waveform analysis showed the second echo had higher amplitude, proving the second shot was closer to the camera than the first. The examination team confirmed this as authentic audio evidence, not mechanical noise or overdubbed sound. The comprehensive report from the Charleston Forensic Laboratory, 47 pages thick, was sent to the Cold Case Unit in early October. The conclusion was bolded. Examination results confirm the metal box discovered at Moselle Ridge contains evidence directly related to the 1951 Caldwell disappearance. The samples, including human hair, brass shell casings, and Super 8 film reel, all match forensically with data stored in file 4217. In the technical appendix, a location map showed the box was found 196 yards from the old dog kennel, near the area marked in the original 1951 crime scene diagram. Experts concluded this could be an intermediate location where evidence was buried or hidden. Eleanor Hayes read the entire results and immediately noted in the report, "All 3 independent examination groups point in the same direction. The evidence was collected from the same scene, matching the dog kennel area on the Caldwell farm." Clear signs of criminal activity. She signed off at the end of the report, assigning the new file number, Case 4217R, with the designation Reanalysis 2004. This was the first time in West Virginia state history that a disappearance case closed for over 5 decades was proven to have authentic forensic traces related to violent acts. With 4 primary pieces of evidence, victim DNA hair, matching ballistics, audio and visual data from the Super 8 film, and the evidence discovery location within the original scene perimeter. The Caldwell case was officially classified as an unsolved criminal case, transitioning to the focused investigation phase of the cold case unit. Immediately after receiving the forensic examination report from Charleston, the cold case investigative team led by Eleanor Hayes decided to conduct a resurvey of the original crime scene at Moselle Ridge. Based on the 1951 topographic map and coordinates identified in the forensic report, the old dog kennel area was selected as the central point for the excavation. In early October 2004, the State Geological Technical Team brought in GPR equipment, ground-penetrating radar, a new type equipped for special cases. The GPR machine uses low-frequency radar waves to detect changes in soil structure, helping identify burial pits, cracks, or covered objects. The survey date was recorded in the report as October 5, with dry weather and a stable temperature of 22 degrees C. The dog kennel area was located on a gentle slope behind the wooden house, now overgrown with weeds and bushes. The 6 old kennel compartments still had rotted wooden foundations, with only rusted iron frames remaining. The technical team divided the area into a 5x5 meter grid, moving the scanner in parallel strips. After more than an hour, the radar screen displayed an abnormal signal in the northeast position of the kennel, about 7 meters from the rear wall. The reflected wave band showed a rectangular void approximately 1.8 meters deep, measuring 1.6 x 0.9 meters, consistent with the dimensions of an old burial pit that had been filled in. Hayes immediately ordered the area cordoned off, coordinates marked, and an expanded search report drafted. The forensic team was mobilized the same day, bringing excavation tools and preservation bags. Digging began at 13 o'clock under Hayes' direct supervision. The first soil layer, about 30 centimeters thick, was mostly topsoil containing roots and gravel. At nearly 1 meter deep, the soil turned darker and more compact. At 1.6 meters, the technician's metal tool struck something hard. The surrounding soil was gently cleared, gradually revealing a bone shaped like a human femur, broken in the middle, but with the joint head intact. The area was immediately sealed off. Subsequent bone fragments were carefully excavated, the pelvic bone, a section of arm bone, and many smaller fragments. A total of 11 bone pieces were collected, all discolored, due to reactions with soil minerals, indicating they had been there for a long time. At the same soil layer, the excavation team found a small round metal object covered in mud. When preliminarily cleaned with a soft brush, the hand-engraved letters MC became clearly visible on the inner surface. A woman's silver ring, a style common in the 1940s. The evidence was numbered 17 and sealed on site. About 20 centimeters from the ring's location, a dark-colored fabric piece was discovered, made of cotton similar to shirt material, still retaining hand-stitched seams. Initial analysis showed the fabric was partially rotted but not fully decomposed. In the crime scene report, Hayes clearly noted, abnormal soil structure detected at 1.8 meters depth. Human bones, ring-engraved MC, and dark fabric piece found. Suspected primary or secondary burial site. Soil samples around the pit were collected for stratigraphic analysis and to determine burial timing. The geological analysis results were sent back by the state specialist lab after 2 weeks, showing the soil inside the pit distinctly different from the surrounding natural stratigraphy. In the middle of the pit, there was a dark sediment layer containing many young roots interspersed, indicating the area had been dug up and refilled at least once. Soil moisture and mineral ratios allowed estimation that the most recent disturbance occurred between 1955–1957. This result was clearly stated in the conclusion. Stratigraphic signs indicate the burial pit was reopened and refilled in the mid-1950s. This implied the possibility that the body was initially buried there and later moved or disturbed. Eleanor Hayes noted in the report, excavation site matches the suspected area on the 1951 map. Archaeological and stratigraphic evidence points to burial around 1951, with possible secondary interference in 1956. All bones were transferred to the Charleston Forensic Laboratory for anthropological examination to determine gender, age, and DNA comparison with the hair sample from the metal box. The silver ring and fabric piece were sent to the materials department to determine manufacturing origin and age. The completed crime scene report dated October 12 was 16 pages long, including location diagrams, excavation photos, and stratigraphic charts. Hayes' conclusion stated, GPR survey and excavation at Moselle Ridge discovered a 1.8-meter deep burial pit containing human remains and personal items matching the identification of victim Margaret Caldwell. Stratigraphic traces indicate the site was interfered with a second time around 1956. This is direct geographical evidence confirming intentional concealment. The report was signed for verification and forwarded to the West Virginia State Police Headquarters, with a note that the excavation was completed without incident. Evidence preserved intact. At the end of the workday, the burial pit area was covered with sealed tarps, fenced for protection, and marked in the state coordinate system, becoming the second official crime scene in the Caldwell case since 1951. After completing the excavation and collecting samples at Moselle Ridge, investigator Eleanor Hayes and the cold case team began the data synthesis phase to reconstruct the entire sequence of events in the 1951 case. All results from the examination labs, topographic maps, photos, and old statements were reorganized in chronological order. Hayes' goal was to establish a consistent timeline between physical evidence, audio, and remaining administrative documents. In an internal meeting in early November 2004, she presented to the 6-member investigative team a comprehensive diagram with 4 main phases on the night of the incident. Argument in the house, gunshots at the dog kennel, vehicle movement, police report the next morning. The first basis was established from the 1951 statement of housekeeper Eunice Palmer, who confirmed hearing an argument between David and his son Paul around 8 o'clock in the evening. This sound matched the visual data in the Super 8 film recovered from the metal box, showing 2 people at the dog kennel area under dim light, estimated in the dusk time frame. The audio signal recorded 2 gunshots 2.3 seconds apart, confirming gunfire in the dog kennel area at that time. Acoustic analysis also showed the distance between the camera position and the blast source was only about 40 meters, consistent with the location marked on the original crime scene map. The second data came from the ballistics report. Both shell casings found in the metal box matched the Remington 870 owned by David Caldwell. Combined with Hinton's 1951 note about 2 Remington shotguns missing from the gunroom, Hayes determined one of them was the weapon used that night. There was no evidence of strangers entering the house, as all doors were locked, and no signs of forced entry were found. Thus, the only person who could access the weapons and the scene during that time was David Caldwell. The fabric piece and silver ring engraved MC, excavated from the 1.8-meter deep pit, indicated Margaret Caldwell was present at the dog kennel area at the same time. The ring was identified as matching a photo of her hand in the 1949 insurance file. The light blue cotton fabric was fiber analyzed and matched the type of shirt in a family photo taken weeks before the disappearance. The DNA hair in the metal box also belonged to Margaret, reinforcing the hypothesis that her body was once at the dog kennel area before being moved. From the above data, Hayes reconstructed the chain of events on the night of July 12, 1951, as follows. After dinner, a major argument broke out between David and his son Paul in the house over the boat accident Paul was involved in a few months earlier. According to old newspaper records, the accident killed a local girl, and Paul was driving the boat but was not prosecuted due to his father's influence. Many witnesses at the time believed the matter was settled to avoid damaging the Caldwell family's reputation. However, according to notes in Detective Hinton's notebook, Paul had told his mother he wanted to tell the police the whole story. This may have been the cause of the family conflict. Around after 8 o'clock in the evening, Maggie and Paul went out to the dog kennel as usual. Evidence in the Super 8 film showed two men at the scene, one older and one younger. 2 consecutive gunshots were recorded, consistent with the time neighbor Howard Denton heard dogs barking and saw the yard light suddenly go out. Not long after, truck headlights were seen leaving the farm and returning at dawn, according to witness Vernon Hale. This matched the discovery of tire tracks consistent with Caldwell's Ford F-100 at the scene, indicating that after the shooting, he may have used the truck to transport objects or bodies away from the dog kennel area. The next morning, David Caldwell was the first to call and report the disappearance, starting the case. The time gap between the nighttime shooting and the next morning was nearly 12 hours, a window Hayes assessed as sufficient to move, bury, or conceal evidence. She compiled all these timelines into an event table, clearly noting each supporting evidence source. 20 o'clock, witness Palmer heard arguing. 2040, Super 8 film footage at the dog kennel. 2042, 2044, 2 gunshots, 2.3 seconds apart. 21 o'clock, 22 o'clock, witness Denton saw Caldwell washing the truck. 2 o'clock, 3 a.m. Witness Hale saw truck headlights leaving and returning to the farm. 6:12 a.m. Missing persons call. This data chain, when compared with physical examination results, showed all key activities occurred within the Caldwell property, with him being the only person confirmed present throughout the entire time. There was no evidence of external intrusion or signs of robbery. Therefore, the investigative team preliminarily concluded that David Caldwell was at the scene and a witness, while also likely directly involved in the deaths of Margaret and Paul Caldwell. Regarding motive, Hayes re-examined financial documents and Paul's boat accident records. She discovered in the 1951 internal memo from the law firm where Caldwell worked an entry for legal support fund corresponding to the accident timing. He likely spent money to cover his son's legal liability. When Paul wanted to confess the truth, Caldwell may have feared his reputation and career being destroyed, especially as he was in the process of being nominated for a legal advisor position at a major mining company. From this, Hayes noted in her assessment, the most reasonable motive is protecting reputation and social status while preventing legal consequences from his son's boat accident. She concluded the synthesis report with the chain of physical evidence, audio data, witness statements, and financial analysis all point to a unified scenario. The incident on the night of July 12, 1951, resulted from family conflict using a legal weapon owned by David Caldwell. The scene was then cleaned and evidence moved from the area. The 68-page synthesis was compiled into an official file, signed E. Hayes, lead investigator, opening a new phase of the investigation after more than half a century. After completing the timeline reconstruction and determining Caldwell was the only person at the scene on the night of the incident, investigator Eleanor Hayes moved to the phase of collecting statements from surviving witnesses connected to the Moselle Ridge area in the 1950s. She reviewed the old Cabell County census list, cross-referenced with the initial investigation file, and identified 2 people who might still be local. Mary Lou Jenkins, a neighbor living less than half a mile from the Caldwell farm, and Samuel O'Rourke, a former worker at the Moselle Ridge coal mine, now retired in the town of Milton. Both were in their 80s, but still lucid and had good memories of events from that time. On November 12, 2004, Hayes and associate Richard Boone visited Mary Lou Jenkins at Greenfield Nursing Home. Jenkins was initially cautious when asked about the Caldwell family, but after Hayes explained the case had been reopened, she agreed to provide a statement. In the recorded transcript, her voice was trembling but clear. "That night I was still awake because of thunder. I remember standing on the porch and seeing truck lights from the Caldwell yard shining onto the road. He was washing his Ford, very late, probably around 11 o'clock at night." When Hayes asked why she remembered the time, she replied, "I had just locked the chicken coop and my clock showed exactly 10:45. The detail that caught Hayes' attention was Jenkins' description of the color of the water flowing into the ditch. "I saw water spreading across the yard, dark in color, not like mud. Under the light, it looked reddish-brown. I thought he was washing off mine dirt, but the smell was strange, sharp and fishy." She added that the next day, when passing by, the ditch still had dark streaks, and the grass around it had withered. In the 1951 file, Jenkins' statement was recorded in just one line. "Saw Caldwell washing truck late." Investigator Hinton had tried to add more details at the time, but they were omitted from the official version. Hayes compared them and realized that Jenkins' 2004 description matched the phenomenon commonly seen when blood mixed with water clings to metal surfaces and then flows onto damp ground. The investigative team took soil samples from the old drainage ditch location, now barely visible, for testing, but results were not yet released at that time. 4 days later, Hayes met Samuel O'Rourke at his home in Milton. The 86-year-old man, with snow-white hair, still clearly remembered his final years working at the Moselle Ridge mine. During the official statement session, he recounted, "Around 1956, I was hired for private work after hours by a man named David Caldwell. He said he needed to bury a heavy object, possibly an iron barrel or safe, on the old land near the mine site. He paid in cash, no records." Hayes asked for more details, and O'Rourke closed his eyes for a long moment before saying, "It was like a long box carried by 2 people. He told me to dig about 6 feet deep, bury it, and level the surface. I worked at night, only with a flashlight. Afterward, he said not to tell anyone, because it's just personal documents. I didn't think much of it, just found it odd to dig in a place no one used." When Hayes showed the excavation site map for verification, O'Rourke pointed directly to the northwest area of the dog kennel, exactly where the investigative team found the metal box in 2004. He said firmly, "Right there. I remember because there was a stump of an oak tree just east of the hole. While digging, I leaned the shovel against it." This information was confirmed by current satellite imagery, which still showed the stump of the old oak cut flat. The 8-page interrogation transcript clearly stated, witness Samuel O'Rourke stated he was hired to bury a metal object at night around 1956, at coordinates matching the location where the metal box containing evidence was discovered. When asked about Caldwell's appearance that night, O'Rourke said, "He was calm, well-dressed, but his hands shook slightly. I asked what was inside, and he just said something no longer important. After filling it in, he told me to stop, personally tamp the soil a few more times, and said that's enough." That statement was noted separately by Hayes in her personal notebook, marked in red pen. The results of the 2 witness statements were compared and compiled into a synthesis report dated November 20th. Both witnesses described details consistent with established data. Jenkins confirmed Caldwell washed the truck with dark-colored water within the time frame of the gunshots. O'Rourke identified the burial location and timing matching the stratigraphic data indicating 1956. The 2 independent statements, separated by over 5 decades, complemented each other, forming a logical chain of information, bridging the gaps in the timeline Hayes had once called 12 hours of silence and 5 years of concealment. In the assessment section of the report, Hayes wrote, "The statements of Mary Lou Jenkins and Samuel O'Rourke provide corroborative elements beyond physical evidence, reinforcing the hypothesis that Caldwell personally handled the scene and relocated evidence between 1951 and 1956. Both witnesses described events independently with a reliable level of detail, precisely corresponding to excavation and forensic examination results." The report was signed and filed under Case 4217R, Appendix C, establishing that after more than half a century, the last witnesses of Moselle Ridge were still there to recount the part of the story the 1951 file had omitted. Once the final witness statements were confirmed, investigator Eleanor Hayes shifted focus to examining financial factors, the least scrutinized aspect of the 1951 file, but potentially explaining why the initial investigation was abruptly halted. She requested the State Police Data Analysis Unit to retrieve bank, tax, and financial transaction records of David Caldwell from 1949-1952. Most of these records were stored in paper form at the West Virginia State Archives and had never been digitized. After 2 weeks of review, the financial specialist team discovered a series of tax payment ledgers and transaction logs from Huntington National Bank. Amid personal expenses and payments to Caldwell's law office, an unusual transfer appeared, dated July 19, 1951, just 1 week after the disappearance was reported. The amount was $3,000 USD, a significant sum at the time, equivalent to nearly $30,000 in current value. The recipient was Roy Nance, Cabell County Sheriff. The handwritten note on the transfer slip clearly read, "For Search Fund, Moselle Ridge." Hayes immediately requested cross-verification with the county sheriff's office accounting records to confirm whether any search fund was established during this period. The results showed no budget entry named Search Fund, nor any receipts documenting private search activity expenditures. At the same time, the county's internal report made no mention of receiving external financial support. The $3,000 thus became a major question mark. The cold case financial unit traced the transfer order and confirmed it came from Caldwell's personal account, not his law firm or family account. The slip was hand-signed, authenticated at the Huntington branch, with handwriting fully matching samples in his tax files. Upon further examining Nance's expense log, Hayes discovered in the 1951 sheriff's salary ledger and other sources income entry of exactly $3,000, written in different ink and without explanation. This amount also did not appear in Nance's personal income tax report filed with the state treasury. In his final 1951 summary report, Nance only mentioned search costs covered by voluntary community support, but provided no donor list or invoices. All traces indicated the money from Caldwell went directly to Nance without passing through any administrative channel. Hayes expanded the search in Huntington National Bank's archived accounting system and discovered in late August 1951, near the time file 4217 was closed, Caldwell's account had a $1,200 cash withdrawal, noted in the bank ledger as personal expenses. The same day, Nance submitted a purchase order for a new Ford vehicle, paying $1,200 in cash up front, with the remainder on installment. This was confirmed by the invoice retained at Huntington Motor Company. When connected, the payment transfer vehicle purchase sequence showed a linked timeline and value, matching dollar for dollar. The Financial Analysis Unit's 12-page report concluded that no accounting documents prove the money from Caldwell was used for search activities, and all circumstantial evidence indicates recipient Roy Nance used it for personal purposes. The final summary line stated, "The transaction structure is irregular, showing signs of bribery or payment to influence the investigation conclusion." Eleanor Hayes carefully read the report, then requested re-examination of the handwritten note for Search Fund, Moselle Ridge. The State Handwriting Examination Lab confirmed the script matched 100% with Caldwell's handwriting in legal contracts from that era. The slant and spacing between the characters in Search and Fund were identical, ruling out substitution by another person. The examination report was signed and verified by appraiser Franklin Moore. In the Cold Case Unit's internal working memo dated December 2, 2004, Hayes presented the findings. The transfer on July 19, 1951, between Caldwell and Nance clearly constitutes bribery. No rescue fund existed. The transaction was conducted in cash, bypassing administrative procedures. This payment occurred only 5 days before the final report concluded the disappearance had no criminal elements. She requested this content be updated in Case 4217R, Appendix D, Financial Correlation. The same day, the financial technical team added a chart showing Caldwell's cash flow from June to September 1951, revealing total expenditures double his declared income. In the analysis, they noted large expenditures during the investigation period indicate signs of concealing cash flow. No similar transactions found in prior or subsequent years. Eleanor Hayes concluded in her assessment, paying Sheriff Nance, while he was the direct decision-maker in closing the case, proves personal interest interfered with the investigation process. Financial evidence reinforces the hypothesis that Caldwell used influence and wealth to block any investigative leads pointing to him. The final line in the memo was handwritten by her in blue ink. Not just a crime concealed, but justice bought. The report was sent to the state police director, accompanied by copies of vouchers, statements, and handwriting verification. In the archive system, the Caldwell case was updated with a brief note, financial corruption link established. Roy Nance, David Caldwell transaction, 1951. With this discovery, the case was no longer just a disappearance, it became evidence of corruption within the law enforcement apparatus of that era, and the final key to closing the most obscure chapter in West Virginia's investigative history. In September 2004, after solidifying forensic, financial, and witness evidence, the cold case investigative team officially requested a summons for David Caldwell, then 84 years old, to appear at the Cabell County Sheriff's headquarters for questioning. He lived alone in a small house in northern Huntington, about 10 miles from Moselle Ridge. In administrative records, he was still listed as a retired attorney, with no prior convictions or record, but in poor health, walking with a cane. When Hayes and two investigators appeared at his door, Caldwell opened it calmly, wearing an old cardigan and reading glasses. He looked at them for a moment and said, "I knew you'd come. Old stories don't let anyone rest." The interrogation was conducted at his home at the request of his family doctor, with full audio recording. Hayes began with basic questions. Did he know why the 1951 disappearance case had been reopened? And did he wish to say anything before the investigative agency released the examination results? Caldwell sat upright, hands clasped, voice hoarse but firm. "I said everything that needed to be said back then. Where they went, I don't know. I didn't kill anyone, and I didn't bury anything." Hayes did not react, simply opening the thick file folder on the table. She presented the examination results one by one. DNA hair matching Margaret Caldwell's medical records. 2 shell casings fired from the Remington 870 registered in his name, and the Super 8 film reel capturing images of him and his son Paul at the dog kennel just before 2 gunshots rang out. Caldwell only stared in silence. When Hayes played the restored footage on a portable screen, the flickering light reflected on his aged face, and for a few seconds his hands trembled slightly. Her voice was steady. "Can you confirm that the person in this footage is you?" A long silence. Finally he answered, so softly the recorder had to amplify it. "It might be me, but I don't remember anymore. Back then, everyone filmed." Hayes continued, this time presenting the photo of the silver ring engraved MC and the excavation report from the burial pit at Moselle Ridge. "This ring was found with the remains. Can you explain why it was in your land, 7 meters from the dog kennel?" Caldwell looked up, his eyes cloudy but sharp. "Anyone could have put that there. You're talking about 50 years ago. That land hasn't been mine for a long time." He tried to force a smile, but his face twitched slightly. After 2 hours, the interrogation reached a deadlock. Caldwell repeatedly denied all accusations, insisting he remembered no details from the July 1951 night. He said, "I was sleeping in the house, woke up and they were gone. I called the police. That's it." When Hayes asked about the $3,000 sent to Sheriff Nance, he reacted sharply. "That was money I contributed for the search. Nothing shady. If they didn't find anyone, it's not my fault." His voice hardened, hands gripping the armrest tightly. Hayes recognized the strategy of complete denial, but she persisted. She presented the handwriting verification confirming the note for search fund. Moselle Ridge was his. while cross-referencing the transaction date with the day Nance signed the case closure order. Caldwell did not look at the documents, only saying softly, "Those papers don't prove anything. Anyone can forge them." When Hayes asked about Samuel O'Rourke, who stated he was hired to bury the metal box in 1956, he closed his eyes, breathed heavily, then shook his head. "I've never heard that name. People imagine a lot." The interrogation stretched past noon. Each time faced with new evidence, Caldwell either fell silent or evaded, never directly refuting, but also never admitting. When Hayes played the Super 8 film audio, where two voices clearly rang out, "Pa, don't," followed by two blasts 2.3 seconds apart, he turned his face away, shoulders slightly hunching. In the audio transcript, only the creak of the chair and heavy breathing were recorded. After a few minutes, he said, "I don't know what you want. It's over. No one benefits from digging it up." Hayes ended the interrogation at 14:10. In her comments, she wrote, "Suspect uncooperative, denies everything, but provides no counter-evidence. Psychological fluctuations observed when confronted with visual and audio evidence. Signs of awareness of content, but deliberate avoidance of answers." She sent the full audio recording and transcript to the state prosecutor. Based on the body of physical evidence, DNA, film, ballistics, witnesses, and bribery money trail, the prosecutor's office concluded conditions were sufficient to request search and temporary arrest warrants. On September 16, 2004, the Cabell County judge signed the search warrant for David Caldwell's home, authorizing seizure of any documents, evidence, or remaining weapons. Police executed the warrant the next morning. Caldwell stood on the porch, not resisting. As Hayes read the suspect's rights, he only said, "You think you found it all? No. You've only seen what others left behind." That statement was recorded verbatim in the report. He was taken to county headquarters for formal continued interrogation. Hayes' end-of-day report clearly stated, interrogation on September 15, 2004, ended without confession. However, reactions to evidence indicate suspect has clear awareness of the case content. Existing data provides sufficient legal basis to proceed with search and initiate arrest procedures. The file was stamped ready for prosecution. Case 4217R, marking the biggest turning point in the investigation since the Caldwell file was reopened. On the morning of September 17, 2004, per the Cabell County Judge's order, the cold case team, in coordination with the West Virginia State Police, conducted a full search of David Caldwell's home in North Huntington. The small one-story house sat at the end of a quiet street, red brick walls, front yard covered in dry leaves. When the police vehicles arrived, Caldwell was already seated on the porch, old wooden cane in hand. He showed no resistance, only saying, "Do your job." The county sheriff read the search warrant aloud, specifying the scope included all rooms, basement, and the shed in the back. Hayes directly supervised, along with 3 forensic technicians and 2 scene photographers. The house was kept neat but dated, paperwork and law books stacked on the desk. In the living room hung numerous professional awards from the 1960s, all inscribed David A. Caldwell, Esquire. In the hallway leading to the basement, a technician discovered a wooden door locked with a dull brass padlock. Caldwell showed no reaction when asked for the key. He pointed to a drawer and said, "The shortest one." When the door opened, a musty smell escaped. Inside was a 3-meter-long basement with wooden shelves along the wall, covered in thick dust. On the shelves, 3 antique guns lay side by side, a 1903 Springfield, a long-barrel Winchester, and a dark black Remington 870 with wooden stock, matching the type registered in his name in 1951. The serial number engraved on the body, 870-51243WV, matched exactly the number in the state weapon registry records. Hayes immediately ordered sealing. All 3 guns were photographed in place, barrel lengths measured, and placed in specialized transport cases. Additionally, in a metal drawer at the end of the basement, they found an old ammunition box labeled Remington 12 gauge, containing 6 intact rounds. The box was damp, but the seal was still intact, dated 1949. Caldwell sat quietly, only saying softly, "Just collecting. I kept them for memory." No one responded. Police continued searching the attic, collecting additional personal items, notebooks, old letters, and several faded family photos. In the bedroom, on the nightstand, was a small wooden box containing scraps of paper, including a newspaper clipping from the Huntington Herald, dated December 23, 1951. Headlined, "Caldwell Disappearance Yields No Results." The accompanying photo showed him with his wife and children on the porch, faces stern. Hayes glanced briefly, then ordered everything sealed. That same afternoon, the 3 guns and ammunition box were transported to the Charleston Forensic Laboratory for ballistic testing. Technician James Carell, who had analyzed the shell casings from the metal box, personally handled the tests. In the preliminary report sent to the cold case team 2 days later, Carell confirmed the Remington 870, serial number 870-51243, WV, has firing pin impressions and barrel rifling that match 100% with the 2 shell casings recovered from the metal box at Moselle Ridge. The match level was 100%, with error under 0.2 microns, impossible by chance. The report concluded, "This firearm is the weapon that fired the 2 shots in the incident on the night of July 12, 1951. When the results reached Huntington, Hayes read them multiple times before signing verification. She understood this evidence, combined with the prior chain, completely closed the circle of suspicion. No longer hypothesis or conjecture, but scientific conclusion. The report was added to Case 4217R, Appendix E, Ballistics Verification. On the afternoon of September 21, 2004, the West Virginia State Prosecutor's Office officially issued an arrest warrant for David Caldwell on 2 charges: second-degree murder and concealment destruction of bodies. When police arrived, Caldwell was seated in the living room, gray suit neatly pressed, cane beside the chair. He showed no surprise, only asking, "Do I need a lawyer?" Hayes replied, "You have the right to counsel, but we have all the evidence." He gave a faint smile. "You'll never understand why I did it, if I really did." The arrest proceeded orderly. He was escorted to the police vehicle, hands not cuffed, due to age and health. En route to headquarters, Caldwell remained silent. Huntington media quickly reported that afternoon. Veteran attorney arrested in 1951 disappearance, cold case solved. On screen, the image of the frail old man in the car, eyes vacant, shocked many in the area. At headquarters, Caldwell underwent medical examination before transfer to holding. Hayes observed from outside, saying nothing. In the summary report dated September 21, 2004, she wrote, "Search of suspect's home recovered 3 firearms, 1 Remington 870 matching 1951 registration serial. Ballistic examination confirms absolute match with shell casings from Moselle Ridge scene. Sufficient legal basis to prosecute for murder and body concealment." The report was forwarded to the state prosecutor that night. For the first time in over half a century, everything once buried under the cold soil of Moselle Ridge had been brought back to light, and the last living person in that story officially became the defendant in a case he himself had once helped close. After arrest and transfer to Cabell County Police Holding, David Caldwell was allowed to meet his private attorney, a former colleague in Huntington, before formal interrogation began. The first interrogation took place on September 22, 2004, led directly by investigator Eleanor Hayes, with the state prosecutor's representative and a forensic specialist present. Caldwell appeared tired, frail, but his eyes remained alert, voice low and steady. He agreed to full audio and video recording of the session. Hayes opened with the familiar question, "Do you wish to add or correct anything in your prior statements?" Caldwell sat silent for a long while before replying, "I've kept silent for over half a century. Maybe there's nothing left to keep now." That statement opened a 4-hour continuous interrogation, the first time he admitted the full truth about the night in July 1951. According to Caldwell's statement, that evening he returned home late from the law office. Before dinner, Paul, then 17, again brought up the Guyandotte boat accident, the incident where he was driving and caused a girl's death. Caldwell had used personal influence to settle it, preventing charges against his son, but Paul, in remorse, wanted to turn himself in. The boy said if he didn't speak, his mother would do it for him, Caldwell recounted, voice trembling. He said a major argument broke out among the three in the dining room. Maggie supported Paul telling the truth, while he firmly opposed, fearing his career would collapse. I told them they didn't understand the consequences, then I walked out. But they followed me, all the way to the dog kennel. Caldwell recounted the fateful moment. Paul was holding the Remington 870, the type of shotgun the father and son often used for target practice on birds. He set it down on the ground, saying, "I don't need it anymore, I just need you to listen." Maggie was standing nearby at that time, trying to pull Paul away. I stepped forward, intending to take the gun back. I grabbed the stock, but as I pulled, the trigger went off. A single shot rang out. According to Caldwell, that shot hit Maggie in the chest, causing her to collapse right next to the dog kennel. I stood frozen, then Paul screamed. The boy rushed to his mother. All I remember after that was the sound of my own heartbeat. He paused for quite a while at this point. Hayes said nothing, just staring straight at him. Then Caldwell continued, voice choking. He turned to look at me, his eyes filled with nothing but panic and hatred. I don't know why I did it, I just remember reaching again, pulling the trigger once more. The second shot hit Paul in the neck. He said he had no intention of killing his son, acting only in extreme panic. Everything happened in a few seconds. When the echoes faded, I knew I had lost everything. After realizing the consequences, Caldwell stated he tried to cover up the incident. I dragged them into the dog kennel, covered them with a tarp, and wiped away the blood. I was afraid the neighbors heard. Then I took the Ford truck, drove down to the riverbank, washed off the mud and blood. The water spread red across the ditch. This statement matched exactly witness Mary Lou Jenkins' description of the dark-colored water flowing into the drainage ditch that night. When Hayes asked about disposing of the bodies, Caldwell sighed. I didn't know what to do. I intended to call the police, but then thought about my reputation, the firm, everything I had built. I dug a pit behind the dog kennel and buried them there, leaving Maggie's ring. I thought no one would find them. This matched the GPR survey results, showing a 1.8-meter burial pit behind the dog kennel area. He continued. A few years later, I heard they planned to reopen the land for mining. I was afraid they'd dig it up. In 1956, I hired someone to move it, a miner named Samuel. I don't remember the last name. We dug it up at night, put everything in a metal box, and buried it at the edge of the mine. This statement fully matched Samuel O'Rourke's testimony about being hired to bury a heavy object in 1956. Hayes asked, "Do you know what was in the box?" He replied, "Her hair, the shell casings, a watch, and a film reel Paul had shot." I couldn't bear to watch it again. When Hayes asked why he kept the film reel, Caldwell answered, "Because it was the last time I saw them. I thought I could keep them that way." In the final part of the interrogation, Hayes requested Caldwell sign to verify the statement. His hand trembled, but he still put pen to paper. The signature David A. Caldwell was shaky but clear. In the official transcript, she noted, "Suspect admits causing 2 deaths on the night of July 12, 1951, claims wife's death due to accidental discharge and son shot in panic. Subsequently buried bodies. Staged scene, relocated evidence in 1956. The Charleston Forensic Laboratory, upon receiving the statement, conducted additional examinations. Based on bullet trajectory analysis and bone fracture patterns in the remains, they confirmed both victims were shot at close range, under 3 meters, with a low horizontal angle, consistent with the shooter standing face-to-face at chest level. The recovered projectiles matched Remington 12-gauge type, same as the gun found in Caldwell's home. The forensic report concluded, both victims shot by the same gunman, same firing position. Sole weapon Remington 870 serial number 870-51243, WV. In her personal notes after the interrogation, Hayes wrote, Caldwell's statement neither justifies nor fully blames circumstances. It is a combination of guilt and calculation, an accident turned into crime out of fear of losing reputation. He did not kill for revenge, but to preserve his own image. The interrogation ended at 1845. Caldwell was returned to holding in stable condition. As he left the room, he said softly, just loud enough for the recorder to catch, "You see, justice only arrives when no one needs it anymore." That statement was recorded verbatim by Hayes in the report appendix, like the final words of a man who once believed power could cover everything, until the truth rose from the earth, carrying the echo of two gunshots silent for over half a century. The trial of David A. Caldwell, considered the closure of one of the oldest cold cases in West Virginia state history, officially opened on March 17, 2005, at the Charleston Federal Courthouse. The large second-floor courtroom was packed with reporters, witnesses, and spectators. The press called it the trial of the century because it not only revolved around a family crime but also exposed half a century of silence within the public apparatus. The defendant, 84 years old, was wheeled into the courtroom wearing a gray sweater and brown coat. White hair, deep-set but still bright eyes, he neither bowed his head nor looked at the gallery. Beside him was his defense attorney, a former partner at Caldwell and Green law firm. State Prosecutor Martin Doyle opened in a grave voice, "Today we are not just trying a crime, but trying the forgetting of justice. 2 lives were buried in silence for 53 years. Now, science, persistence, and truth have given them voice." The court allowed the prosecution to present evidence in chronological order. First was the DNA evidence. Results from analyzing the hair strand in the metal box discovered at Moselle Ridge. A forensic analyst from the Charleston laboratory presented the genetic chart, pointing out the absolute match between this DNA sample and Margaret Caldwell's 1949 medical records. When the enlarged photo of the hair appeared on screen, Caldwell stared silently, hands gripping the wheelchair arms. Next was ballistics evidence. The 2 Remington 12-gauge brass shell casings were displayed before the jury, along with comparison photos of firing pin impressions between the casings and the Remington 870 seized from Caldwell's home. Technician James Carell explained slowly, "Every dent, every barrel rifling mark matches absolutely. There is no other possibility than these 2 rounds being fired from that gun." He projected magnified microscope images, and the jury nodded. The most riveting part was the Super 8 film reel, the 48-second clip restored nearly completely. When the flickering images appeared on the screen, the courtroom fell dead silent. The old dog kennel, 2 figures, one older, one younger, facing each other, then 2 blasts, 2.3 seconds apart. The sound echoed, slightly distorted by time, but chillingly clear. An invited audio expert confirmed, both shots fired at close range in open space from the same sound source position. No mistake possible. One juror wiped tears with a handkerchief. Many in the gallery bowed their heads. After the film, the prosecution called witnesses Mary Lou Jenkins and Samuel O'Rourke. Jenkins, 89, was helped to the stand with a cane. Her voice trembled but clear. "I saw him washing the truck late, water running reddish-brown. I knew it wasn't mud." The defense asked no further questions. O'Rourke, white-haired and gaunt, recounted the 1956 night he was hired to bury a heavy object at the Moselle Ridge mine edge. When the prosecution projected the crime scene map, he pointed exactly to the burial coordinates where the metal box was found. Their testimony matched forensic data perfectly, leaving the jury with almost no doubt. The next presentation was financial records, where Prosecutor Doyle released copies of the 1951 transfer order from Caldwell's account to Sheriff Roy Nance, $3,000, noted search fund. Moselle Ridge. Doyle said, "This is evidence not just of crime, but of bribery. This money traded for justice and buried the case for half a century." He read aloud Hayes' report line. "Not just a crime concealed, but justice bought." The words echoed in the courtroom. When Eleanor Hayes took the stand, she presented coherently the entire reinvestigation process, from discovering the metal box, DNA analysis, Moselle Ridge excavation, to witness statements. She affirmed, "No single piece stands alone, but together, everything points in one direction only. The man who held the gun that night was David Caldwell." She looked at him, eyes not angry, but sad. Caldwell responded only with a weary nod. The defense began on the third day of trial. The attorney did not deny physical evidence, but argued the incident was a tragic accident rather than intentional crime. He said, "Mr. Caldwell lost everything in one fateful minute. He did not act out of hatred, but fear, panic." The attorney presented the defendant's health condition, chronic heart disease and memory decline, requesting leniency. In his turn, Caldwell requested to speak, his voice weak, sometimes halting. "I don't ask for forgiveness. I only want to say I never intended to kill them. I tried to preserve my reputation, but ended up losing everything. I lived more than half my life in darkness, and every night I hear those 2 gunshots again." He paused, looking toward the black and white photo of Margaret and Paul on the evidence table, then softly said, "They shouldn't have died, but I died that night too." After the jury deliberated for nearly 7 hours, on the evening of March 21, 2005, the court convicted David A. Caldwell of 2 counts of manslaughter and concealment of bodies. Though the defense requested consideration of age and lack of intent, the prosecution asserted post-incident actions, burial, evidence erasure, and bribing the sheriff, showed conscious guilt. Judge Richard Holden read the verdict in absolute silence. Defendant David A. Caldwell is sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole. This sentence is not only to punish, but to affirm that justice has no expiration. When asked if he had any final words, Caldwell only nodded slightly. "I accept it. Maybe at last they can rest in peace." He was wheeled out of the courtroom in silence, without handcuffs, bowing his head lightly before the judge. Outside, Huntington residents gathered, many placing flowers at the courthouse gate as a gesture for the long-lost victims. National media reported, "Justice after 53 years, Caldwell case closed." In the final summary report, investigator Eleanor Hayes wrote, "DNA evidence identifies the victims, ballistics identifies the weapon, Super 8 film identifies the timing, witnesses identify the actions, and money trail identifies the motive. 5 elements form the truth." She ended the last line with, "Justice delayed is still justice. But it can never erase the echo of 2 gunshots on Moselle Ridge." The Charleston trial in 2005 concluded at 16:20. The late afternoon light shone through the courthouse windows, falling on the wooden jury benches. On the evidence table, the Super 8 film reel lay quietly in its new plastic case. Next to the ring-engraved MC, 2 pieces of evidence that reopened the door of justice for those who no longer had a voice. After the March 2005 trial, the David A. Caldwell case officially closed, ending 54 years of silence and distortion. 3 months after the sentence took effect, the West Virginia State Police issued the final notice, Case 4217R, Caldwell Investigation, closed by conviction. The story that began as an unsolved disappearance in 1951 had now become a model file for reinvestigating long-dormant crimes using modern forensic evidence. Investigator Eleanor Hayes was tasked with compiling the comprehensive final report for the entire case. The work took over 6 months. Every document, photo, piece of evidence, and statement transcript was reviewed, numbered and cross-referenced between the 1951 original file and the 2004-2005 examination results. The completed report was 312 pages thick, including 8 appendices and over 150 illustrative images. In the preface, Hayes wrote, "The Caldwell case is not only a lesson in crime, but a lesson in the limitations of people and technology in the past. The truth does not change. We simply took over half a century to hear its voice again." The report's opening section listed the procedural errors of 1951. The crime scene was not properly sealed, evidence was not preserved correctly, files were edited, and the conclusion lacked basis. Notably, Appendix B pointed out that 5 original pieces of evidence in Detective Charles Hinton's report were removed from the official file without destruction records. This action was determined to violate investigation procedures, but could not be prosecuted as all involved individuals had passed away. In the conclusion, Hayes clearly stated, if evidence storage and preservation procedures at the time had followed standards, the Caldwell case could have been resolved in the 1950s. The next section of the report focused on advancements in modern forensic technology, proving science's value in justice. DNA analysis techniques, ballistic comparison via electron microscope scanning, and ground-penetrating radar were the 3 key tools that broke through the wall of time. The report noted, technology cannot replace an investigator's conscience, but it gives justice a longer memory. Accompanying charts described the process of identifying biological traces from 53-year-old hair samples, firing pin analysis via microscanning, and modeling the stratigraphy around the dog kennel at Moselle Ridge. In the operational recommendations section, Hayes proposed 12 reforms for the state's investigation system, including mandatory DNA standard evidence storage, periodic cold case file reviews, and establishing a digital database for all unsolved cases. The report also requested including the Caldwell case in annual training for new investigators. This proposal was approved in June 2006, becoming part of the official curriculum titled The Caldwell Protocol, Integrating Forensics with Historical Evidence. At the Charleston Archives, the case file was stored in a moisture-proof metal box labeled 4217 Rs closed, containing all originals and digitized copies. On the cover was Hayes' note in blue ink. "Justice may sleep, but it never dies." Each year, when new investigator training began, trainees viewed the Super 8 film, excavation photos from the Moselle Ridge pit, and copies of the 1951 financial report. All were used as prime examples of the link between professional ethics and forensic science. In 2007, the West Virginia State Court sent an official thank you letter to the Cold Case Unit. In it, Chief Judge Holden wrote, "Your work restored not just a case, but public faith in the legal system." Eleanor Hayes had by then been promoted to Deputy Director of the Criminal Investigation Division. At the final press conference in Charleston, she said, "Without Caldwell, there would be no us today. One hair strand, one film reel, one ring piece, each tiny thing brought justice back to history." The Caldwell house was sealed after the trial, then transferred to state public trust ownership. The Moselle Ridge farm, once the crime scene, is now a small memorial site with a plaque reading simply, "Margaret and Paul Caldwell, 1951. The truth found its way home." File 4217R, closed in December 2005. The final line in the summary report notes read, "Caldwell case. Completed, justice served. All data archived in Charleston for academic and training purposes." After over half a century, the case was not only resolved with a life sentence for the perpetrator, but also became a milestone in the evolution of modern criminal investigation in West Virginia, proving once again that no matter how long the time, traces of truth always remain, waiting for someone patient enough to listen. The Caldwell case, with all details thought buried for over half a century, is not just a family tragedy in West Virginia, but a mirror reflecting responsibility, ethics, and faith in justice in today's American society. In that story, David Caldwell not only lost his wife and son in a moment of anger and fear, but also lost his own soul by choosing to conceal the truth, bribe law enforcement, and let lies drag on for 54 years. His actions, stemming from an obsession with preserving reputation and status, serve as a warning about the destructive power of authority without ethics. In today's America, where forensic technology can restore even the smallest trace, from a hair strand, a film reel, or a bank account number, the Caldwell case reminds us that no crime truly vanishes, only crimes not yet discovered. Things that seem minor, negligence in evidence storage, the compromise of a bribed officer, or a lie in a report, can delay justice for decades. But the story also shows American society's faith in self-correction, technology, transparency, and the spirit of no one is above the law, brought justice back. The greatest lesson from Moselle Ridge is reputation can be bought, power can shift, but truth cannot. Every citizen, every law enforcer today, whether in West Virginia or anywhere, must remember that strong justice is not built on perfection, but on the courage to face mistakes and relentlessly correct them, even when it is too late. If you believe justice, even delayed, deserves to be heard, please subscribe to join us in continuing to explore cases that have changed faith in truth in America. Thank you for following the Caldwell case journey. See you in the next video, where the past speaks once more.